Welcome to the Corner Perspective. Hi, I'm Bruce Spangler, CEO of the Volunteer Ministry Center, located on the corner of Fifth Avenue and Broadway. The Volunteer Ministry Center is dedicated to ending and preventing homelessness. Today, I'm honored to be with the Knox County Sheriff, Tom Spangler. More proudly, though, is my brother. So, welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Thanks for coming to have a conversation about law enforcement and also for folks who are experiencing homelessness. And oftentimes those folks have mental health issues.
Sure.
I guess you come across many of those in some ways.
We do, and unfortunately, I guess you would say that there's times we come across them in need and also on the criminal side of things. So we deal with both sides and try to separate those things once they get into our facilities.
So how do you separate? How would you know that someone's kind of in a crisis versus just another incident which requires law enforcement intervention?
Well, part of that happens when they first come into the facility and they're evaluated, and within the first 24 to 48 hours they're evaluated by a doctor. So they get questioned, and then they are determined whether or not they need to see one of our on-site psychiatrists or psychologists, whatever that may be there at the time. So they'll be evaluated to that point, and then we'll know where and how we need to assess them.
Okay. Well, it's kind of been commonly known that the jail becomes a de facto housing option for folks who are homeless, especially with mental health issues. You have maybe about 40 that would fall in that category thereabouts?
I would say at least 40, somewhere around there. And and unfortunately, we have to deal with those whether they have a criminal charge. Obviously, they're in our facility because of a criminal charge, but how severe, or how minor that charge may be will also come into play on what we do and how we deal with those individuals and what their disposition within their court case may be, because they may be at a point to where somebody wants them to stay in our facility only because it's safer for them to be in there than out on the street. So those are some of the things we have to contend with.
Sure. I can imagine that with the closing of Lakeshore, that's had some impact on increased, how could I say it, well, I don't want to say, just say the jail population has gone up.
Sure it has, and that is a part of it. And unfortunately, we have suffered here in Knoxville and the surrounding area because of the closure of Lakeshore. We would certainly not be in the position we're in today if it was still operating, but we're having to deal with it in other ways, and unfortunately that way deals with us putting them in our facilities instead of them getting that treatment that they need and required.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that we work very closely with the Knox Police Department simply because we are in the city limits. But I can imagine that whether it's KPD or the Sheriff's Office, that you're often placed in sometimes a lose-lose situation in which you're required to be mental health treatment in some ways.
It is, and we're asked to be law enforcement and then mental health providers and what have you, and it's difficult to do that because our people in law enforcement, for the most part, we're not trained to deal and to effectively deal with those people who need that help. And it kind of puts us in a position that people are saying, why are you not doing this or why are you not doing that? We're not trained to that, and I've made it very clear for quite some time, we do not want to get into that profession because we're not trained, and we want the professionals to be the ones who are dealing with those issues.
Sure. I can imagine that sometimes just the mere protocols of which you abide by for safety reasons. I mean, you have loud voices simply take command of the situation. And when you transport, you have to use handcuffs, right? And so
yes.
I can imagine how traumatic that is for someone who's in a crisis mode.
It is, and we've done that even back when I was on patrol. You go back to the 80s, we transported those patients to another hospital or to another facility to be evaluated or whatever it may be, and we take them out to our car, our cruiser, and then we put them in the back seat. We handcuff them because we have been told that they could be potentially violent. And that's the biggest reason why they always call for law enforcement to transport, is because of that reason. But we may get one of those patients that has been sedated. We don't know how to treat an individual that may have been sedated if something starts happening. What we'd end up doing is stopping our car, unfortunately, somewhere and calling for an ambulance. So there's all kinds of things that come into play there. And we have really put ourselves, law enforcement, in a situation that we probably shouldn't be in, but we're going to continue helping in any way that we can.
Sure, sure. Well, if you had the capability of making a big change. What would be the biggest change relative to your office and mental health? What would be the biggest thing you would want?
Thanks for putting me on the spot.
Sure, that's my job.
The biggest thing would be is to have another facility like Lakeshore here. There is nothing going to replace that. We can temporarily bandage things and do that, but what we end up doing is causing that problem to get bigger, and we can't make a bandage big enough for that. So we're going to have to, so to speak, bite the bullet and say we're going to have to put money into our mental health patients, and that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, well, I agree with you that in terms of we as a country, we as a community, just not quite sure how to deal with mental health issue. And so we've kind of sometimes put it in your lap, if I may say,
Yes.
and unfortunately. Well, I'm so appreciative of the work that you do and very proud of you as my brother, most importantly, but wish you success in your office in the next coming years, and anything that we can do to resource you, then let us know, and we'll always be in contact.
Well, thank you, and I'm going to say the same to you. I'm honored to be your brother, and I'm thankful for what you do, because this community needs people like you, and I'm thankful for that.
You're very kind, very
Thank
kind. Your mama taught you right.
She did.
Is your dad as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for joining with me this episode of The Corner Perspective.